Synopsis. Found dead was vibrant, 62-year-old Marina Falco, who loved vintage fashion and had an infectious laugh. Cadaver dogs came upon her body in a shallow grave behind the Hawthorne family's expansive estate. The discovery set off a frenzy of activity involving forensic teams, detectives, and media swarming to the site. The inquiry turned out a complex network of lies and connections. Friends, sorry to interrupt, but if you like my delivery of information and it's not hard for you, then please subscribe to my channel. I have a goal to get 1111 subscribers at least by the end of the summer. Thank you. Now we can continue. For decades, Marina had been close friend of Livia Hawthorne, the matriarch of the Hawthorne family. Livia and Gregory, her husband, were pillars of the society distinguished by their successful architectural company and philanthropic activities. The pride of their lives, 21-year-old Nico, was a brilliant university student. But underlying this apparently ideal family, secrets simmered. Marina had been seeing Nico, it turned out. She had been cheating. The relationship started off innocuously enough, Marina giving Nico mentoring and advice. But soon it turned into something far more illegal and intense. Their affair started to be the topic of quiet murmurs and explosive gossip. Assigned to the case was seasoned investigator known for her exacting attention to detail. Detective Ilara Vos Ilara felt right away that this was no typical murder. The shallow grave suggested a hurried attempt to hide the crime, and the forensic team rapidly established Marina had died from blunt force trauma to the head. Ilara dug further into Marina's life and found a complicated picture of a woman who bucked convention. Marina had never married. She preferred an adventurous and autonomous life. She had a reputation for being fiercely loyal, and her friendships were deep and long-lasting. But her relationship with Nico really caught out me. To those who knew Marina, it was yet another illustration of her living life on her own terms. To the outside world, it was an unthinkable liaison. For his part, Nico felt terrible about Marina's passing. Genuinely bereaved, he insisted in his first interview that their relationship had been based on mutual respect and love. He said they had argued the night she vanished, but he swore he had no role in her death. The investigators observed his anxiety, but couldn't ignore the fact that his alibi was, at best, erratic. Livia Hawthorne came across as calm during her interview. Speaking warmly of Marina, she related their years of friendship and shared experiences. But Livia's attitude changed when asked about the affair. She acknowledged she knew about the relationship, but she said she had no problems with it, since she thought Nico would outgrow it. Gregory Hawthorne, on the other hand, told another entirely. Gregory was a man of few words, yet his silence and force had always earned respect. Gregory's response to the affair and the likelihood his son might be involved in Marina's death was instructive. He seemed clearly disturbed, his responses austere and guarded. Ilara could see Gregory knew more than he was disclosing. Crucial evidence turned up by forensic investigation of the crime scene. On a garden shovel in the Hawthornes' shed, trace amounts of blood were discovered. Further luminol testing turned up a trail from the house's rear door to the gravesite. This data suggested a rushed effort at crime scene cleanup, but it remained unknown who had delivered the fatal blow. Ilara's team also dug into Marina's past relationships and current activities in order to do a thorough victimology study. They found Marina had been preparing a trip overseas, maybe to get away from the increasing pressure and criticism directed on her relationship with Nico. Her untimely death brought her plans into sharp contrast and suggested she might have been getting ready to bid farewell. Psychological profiling was also used in the research to help to clarify the possible motivations of the engaged parties. The Hawthorne family was clearly tense, and Ilara felt as though the narrative had more layers than first appeared. Every interview and piece of evidence added complexity and higher stakes to the picture. A break in the form of a witness statement emerged as the inquiry advanced. Wilma Klein, a neighbor, said she saw Gregory and Marina fighting fiercely the night she vanished. Wilma's story threw doubt on Gregory's earlier assertions of ignorance about the affair, so augmenting the research. Rising tensions and increasing data helped the case against the Hawthornes to become stronger. Ilara knew she was close to revealing the truth, but she also realized that bringing justice for Marina Falco would depend critically on her next actions. The research was far from finished, and the road forward seemed to be full of surprises and difficulties. The focus turned to the people at the center of the drama: Marina Falco, Nico Hawthorne, Liva Hawthorne, and Gregory Hawthorne. As the inquiry descended, their lives, closely entwined with years of friendship and family ties, were exposing the complexity and conflicts defining their relationships. The vibrant 62-year-old woman whose life had been cut short, Marina Falco, was formidable. She came from a small family and had worked her way to a decent life just from charm and will. Marina had always been a nonconformist, choosing her own road over social mores. Her vulnerabilities, as well as her strengths, came from her independence and audacity. She had grown to mentor Nico Hawthorne in her last years, igniting a relationship as provocative as it was passionate. Livia and Gregory's 21-year-old son, Nico, was a young man caught in a muddle of feelings and expectations. Bright and driven, Nico had always felt as though his parents' expectations were weighing down on him. His affair with Marina was a rebellious and liberating act, a desperate grab at something real in a life too often felt preordained. Nico clearly grieved over Marina's death, and the scrutiny and mistrust now aimed at him added to his sense of loss. Nico's mother, Livia Hawthorne, studied in opposites. She was neat and elegant, yet she radiated calm control that belied the turbulence under surface level. One of the constants in her life had been her friendship with Marina. The affair between Marina and Nico had tried her in ways she had not expected. Livia's first acceptance of the relationship had been more of a passive compliance to Marina's influence over her son than of acceptance driven by will. But as the inquiry went on, her cool front started to show cracks. The Hawthorne family patriarch, Gregory Hawthorne, was a man of few words, but great presence. His tall stature and austere manner earned respect and equal measure of fear. Gregory's response to the affair had been one of quiet resentment, a seething disgust that simmered just below the surface. Gregory's silence grew more sinister as the inquiry turned on his possible role in Marina's death, suggesting deeper secrets and unresolved conflicts. Leading investigator Detective Ilara Voss was resolved to sort the web of half-truths and lies. Her exacting technique and great sense of intuition made her a powerful tool for seeking justice. Ilara's awareness of human nature and her capacity to read between the lines helped her to put the story others wanted to hide together. The research underwent a sea change when forensic entomology was used to project Marina's death's timing. The forensic team was able to identify the particular night her murder occurred by analyzing the insect activity on her remains. This data, together with Wilma Klein's witness statement, positioned Gregory Hawthorne at the scene near the crime time. Gregory's shoes revealed traces of soil and plant matter that matched the location of Marina's body, according to the forensic team. Gregory's involvement was depicted by this damning proof, which also suggested he had been at the funeral site. Livia's growing agitation and Gregory's stoic silence simply served to inspire the detectives to find the truth. Detective Ilara Voss asked a lot of forceful questions as the evidence grew against Gregory. Gregory's initial resistance gave way gradually under the weight of the data and constant inquiry. Gregory broke down at last in a particularly demanding session, confessing that he had confronted Marina on the evening of her death. Gregory said the argument had gotten heated rapidly. Claiming Marina was using her son for her own benefit, he had insisted she cut off her relationship with Nico. Never one to back down, Marina had responded with sharp remarks challenging Gregory's authority and casting doubt on his own integrity. Gregory had struck Marina in a flash of wrath, not understanding the force of his blow until it was too late. The disclosure was terrible, yet also startling. Gregory's admission verified the growing doubts, but it also complicated the case. Driven by a mix of protectiveness and wrath, his actions had been a misguided attempt to recover control over a situation that had spiraled out of hand. Gregory clearly felt regret, but it had little effect to lessen the seriousness of his crime. Gregory's confession seemed to point the case toward closure. Detective Ilara Voss understood, though, that the legal system was still getting started. The confession would have to be validated with all the resources at hand, and the motive, means, and opportunity under close review. The prosecution would have to create a strong case to guarantee Marina Falco received her just treatment. The town of Verdun Springs prepared for the next chapter, the trial revealing the darkest secrets of one of its most esteemed families, as the inquiry peaked. Every person engaged would be affected by Marina's death and the revelations that followed, so permanently altering the fabric of the society. Talk of Verdun Springs was Gregory Hawthorne's trial. Curious onlookers, reporters, and friends of the accused and the victim crowded the court, promising to expose the darkest secrets of the Hawthorne family and bring Marina Falco's terrible death closure. It was a legal show. Under direction from District Attorney Carla Echevarria, the prosecution made a strong case. Echevarria was well known for her courtroom tenacity and accuracy. She painstakingly arranged the proof: the forensic entomology report identifying the time of death, the blood traces on the garden shovel, and the soil samples matching Gregory's shoes. Every bit of data created a story of Gregory's guilt, casting him as a man motivated by anger and a distorted sense of justice. The trial was much enhanced by witness testimony. A key account came from Wilma Klein, the neighbor who saw Gregory and Marina fighting on the evening of her death. Her exact recall of the fight confirmed Gregory's confession and positioned him at the scene. Wilma stayed firm, while the defense sought to discredit her testimony by challenging her memory and dependability. Nico Hawthorne also stood up. His emotional and conflicted testimony is striking. Talking about his relationship with Marina, he said it was based on mutual respect and affection. Nico clearly suffered over Marina's death, and his testimony sought to humanize both Marina and himself. He also related the tense relationship he had with his father, characterizing Gregory's mounting contempt and resentment toward the affair. The most awaited testimony was probably from Livia Hawthorne. She put on a calm front, but there was obvious strain. Livia talked of her long friendship with Marina, the first shock at learning of the affair, and her ultimate acceptance. She said she was caught between her obligation to her family and her loyalty to Marina. Livia's account shed light on the family dynamics and the pressures accumulating over years. Under attorney Victor Kravitz, the defense concentrated on showing Gregory as a man pushed to the brink. Gregory's actions, according to Kravitz, were not planned even if they were tragic. Emphasizing Gregory's emotional struggle, he presented the event as a natural act of desperation instead of cold-blooded murder. Kravitz painted a picture of a man who had momentarily lost control by calling on character witnesses who attested to Gregory's generally cool and logical behavior. It became abundantly evident as the trial went on that the case rested on the jury's belief on whether Gregory's acts were a calculated act of violence or a brief lapse. Though the defense's case, that Gregory had acted in the heat of the moment, found some sympathy, the prosecution's methodical presentation of evidence and motive was difficult to challenge. The prosecution playing a recording of Gregory's interrogation was among the most dramatic events in the trial. The jury was greatly affected by his confession, taken in his own words, together with his obvious regret. Gregory's admission's emotional weight, along with the forensic evidence, created a negative picture. The last battle of wills were the closing arguments, emphasizing the weight of the evidence and the necessity of justice for Marina Falco, District Attorney Echevarria. She urged the jury to take into account Gregory's activities, not only for Marina, but also for Nico and the neighborhood. Conversely, Victor Kravitz asked the jury to see the complicated feelings and family pressures that had driven Gregory to his breaking point, appealing to their compassion. Days of deliberation later, the jury came back with a guilty of manslaughter decision. The choice was a compromise, respecting Gregory's emotional background, while yet noting the seriousness of his acts. Though not as severe as it might have been for a murder conviction, the sentence given was noteworthy. Gregory received a 10-year jail sentence, with 7 eligible for parole. The ending of the trial brought both release from conflict and unresolved questions. For Nico, the result meant the loss of his father, as well as a degree of justice for Marina. Livia battled personal loss and public scrutiny while trying to keep her broken family together. Verdon Springs, meantime, was left to deal with the scandal and how it affected their view of the Hawthorne family. Additionally, feeling closure was Detective Ilara Voss. Her ability and will had been tested by the inquiry, but she had found the truth and guaranteed Marina justice. Ilara came out of the case with a fresh dedication to her field of work, and her painstaking effort and attention were much valued. Though the trial's dust had settled, Verdon Springs still felt Marina Falco's death resonating. Once close-knit, the community was struggling with the nuanced feelings and moral conundrums the case had raised. For many, the aftermath was a period of reflection and reckoning, as the individuals engaged worked to put their lives back together. Nico Hawthorne's road forward was difficult. He was academically behind and emotionally spent from the trial. Although the university had given him a leave of absence during the trial, now he had to return to his studies among sidelong looks and whispers. Nico threw himself into his studies, comforted by the intellectual challenge and organization academics offered. He also went to therapy to work through his grief at losing Marina and the mixed feelings about his father's conviction. Mariel Castro, a fellow student who had been a casual friend prior to the crisis, provided one unanticipated source of encouragement. Mariel contacted Nico and extended a non-judging ear and a shoulder to lean on. Their friendship developed into something more, giving Nico a lighthouse of hope and a reminder that, even following such great loss, life could still hold beauty and connection. Always the cool-headed and strong woman, Livia Hawthorne assumed the roles of mother and father for Nico. She had suffered from the media frenzy and public scrutiny, but she confronted each day with will. Resuming her work for the family architectural company, Livia directed her energies toward community service. In honor of Marina, she planned a charitable event to generate money for a scholarship under her name, so enabling young women to follow their passions independent of social expectations. The scholarship was a tribute to Marina's unwavering spirit and a way to make sure her legacy continued in a constructive sense. For the family, Gregory Hawthorne's incarceration marked a dark chapter. Gregory faced his behavior and the significant effects it had on his family and the community in jail. Seeking to reach the depths of his rage and the decisions that had led to that fatal night, he engaged in therapy and rehabilitation programs, a lifeline. Letters from Livia and Nico gave him a link to the outside world and a reminder of what he still had to live for. Although their relationship stayed tense, there was hope that healing might come about with time. Detective Ilara Voss kept earning recognition inside the police department. Her career had been much enhanced by the Marina Falco case, which highlighted her ability and commitment. Promoted to head detective, Ilara used her position to advocate for improved tools and support for victims of emotional and domestic abuse. The case strengthened her conviction on the need of justice and the necessity of giving those unable of speaking for themselves a voice. Verdon Springs, too, changed as a community. The scandal had made neighbors face difficult realities about relationships, power relations, and the sometimes secret conflicts behind closed doors. Neighbors looking out for one another, and the local authorities launching new initiatives targeted at raising communication and mental health awareness, inspired a fresh sense of alertness and support. The neighbor whose testimony proved so vital for the trial, Wilma Klein, started advocating community participation in local problems. She set up neighborhood watch meetings and urged others to speak out should they find something unusual. Wilma's activities underlined the need of group responsibility and the ability of each person to bring about change. The memory of Marina Falco stayed a painful presence in Verdon Springs as the seasons changed and life gradually returned to some kind of normalcy. Her vitality and strength in life defined her legacy rather than the controversy surrounding her death. Testaments to her continuing influence were the scholarship fund, neighborhood projects, and personal development of people she had touched. Ultimately, the catastrophe the Hawthorne family experienced and the death of Marina Falco acted as a potent reminder of the complexity of human relationships and the far-reaching effects of our activities. It was a tale of loss and atonement, of love and treachery, of the continuing force of community and connection. Though the scars would never completely heal, the people of Verdon Springs discovered ways to honor the past while creating a road forward, one small step at a time.